Hello Orchid friends, welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, staying healthy and staying safe. Here we have a no ID Phalaenopsis orchid from my local grocery store, Trader Joe's. This clip is a bloom video clip from its previous bloom cycle. The reason I'm including this video clip for you is so that we have a reference point to show you what I have done to this orchid after this particular bloom cycle. So at that time, it was obviously bloom already, because I've had this orchid for a couple years now, at least 3 if not 4 years. The reason I bought this orchid was because at the time I hadn't bought any orchid, and then I just saw this one at a grocery store for its, that milky white color in the background. It's not exactly white, it's kind of like milky white with a little bit of yellow in it. But then whenever it's in the sun or strong light, the flower would have that shimmering, that glittering effect. So I love that for this orchid. And then in the center, it also has a little bit of pink in it. So it just, looked good to me. And because I hadn't bought any orchid in a while, so I wanted to buy something. Anyway, back to this orchid. So after I repotted it was growing really well in this setup. And it was growing lots of roots into the media. By the way, this is a semi-hydro setup. And it was also growing a lot of aerial roots. So I was really happy that it was doing really well. But as you can see, lots of aerial roots really is taking up quite a bit of horizontal space. And so after this bloom cycle, I decided to give this orchid a repot. So coming up, we're going to see that this orchid was repotted and it started another bloom cycle. It did not produce flower spike right after the repot, by the way. This is, after I repotted it, and then after some time had passed, and then it started to produce flower spike around end of the year, like the winter essentially. So I just want to make that clear in case you think that the repot caused the flower to produce that the orchid to produce flower spike. That's not the case. Okay, so this time around, this orchid produced 2 flower spikes. So this is also another thing I've been observing with my orchid. If I repot them, the next blooming cycle tend to do better than its previous bloom cycle. And a couple of reasons for that. Well, provided, I think the pretense is that nothing is going on inside the media after the repot. Because sometimes a failed repot is somehow the roots don't get adjusted, or somehow the orchid is set back. So obviously the performance won't be better the next time. But this orchid, everything went well. And I think these are the reasons why this orchid this time around gave me 2 spikes. Number 1, there are more roots in the medium now. So more roots means more nutrient and water intake. Number 2, the old medium or media mixed was replaced with fresh new substrate. It's still a mixture of manto clay and hydrocorn, but has a lot less, I guess, salt buildup, because over time, even though we all know to use weak fertilizer concentration, over time, if you don't soak or flush the orchid well, salt can still accumulate. But with fresh new media, there is none of that. You essentially start with a clean slate. So I think that also did the orchid some good. So new media, and then also more roots into the inside the media allow this orchid to do much better. I've seen this in many other orchids too. So I really think that even though Yes, I'm using inorganic media, and if I don't have to repot this orchid unless there is a root issue, pest issue, or this orchid simply outgrows the container, otherwise I won't have to repot. But sometimes periodic repot can actually also do some good. Otherwise, I really will have to do a good job flushing this orchid or soak this orchid more regularly than not, so that there is no salt to build up. Because I can tell you, when I'm lazy, over time, if I don't soak orchids well, the tips of their leaf can potentially get a little darker or brown or have slight dieback from the tips. That's usually because the salt built up, it's too salty, or the orchid just needs proper flushing. If the salt buildup is too much, that the roots is somehow a little damaged, and it kind of shows that at the tips of the leaves. Anyway, overall, this orchid is very easy to take care of. You can see here also lots of roots inside the media. Yes, there's that one root that's growing out to the top of the media surface, but I'm just gonna leave it because, if everything goes well, I don't have to repot. I'll just let that root be. But if I ever have to repot this orchid again, I'll, try to push it back into the media. It's still in semi-hydro setup. I usually try to give it, maybe instead of filling up all the way to the media, the reservoir, the drainage hole, I now usually just keep about 50% of the water there, essentially half of the reservoir level. And then as for the blue outer cup, that is just to basically black out sunlight to avoid algae. But if that's not an issue for you, the outer cup is not necessary. The decorative pie is not necessary. So this orchid is looking pretty good. Yes, there is some yellowing in the leaves, and I think there's some magnesium deficiency, but I'm gonna keep an eye out for it and see if it will correct itself, because it does get fertilizer and it does get a little bit of Epsom salt each time. But if it needs to get more, I will adjust accordingly. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!